Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to explore the Quran, a text that has literally shaped human history and continues to be the most memorized book on earth. But we aren't just looking at the surface today. We're going to completely peel back the layers of this really fascinating text, from its physical history and the pretty compelling scientific claims argued within its pages, to the complex geographies of unseen realms, and ultimately, its deeply spiritual core. Whether you're already highly familiar with the text, or you're just looking to understand its structural concepts, we're going to break down these complex realities clearly. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to explore the Quran by breaking this down into 5 specific layers. 1. A 23-year divine journey. 2. Science and future technologies. 3. The world of the unseen. 4. The heart and the opening. And finally, 5. The pillars of faith. So, starting off with layer number 1. A 23-year divine journey, looking at the historical text. Before we get into the abstract and the supernatural stuff, we really need to ground ourselves in the physical origins of how this text actually came to be compiled. According to the historical narrative within our sources, this wasn't just a book delivered all at once. The chronological journey actually begins in 610 CE, specifically on a Monday night in the month of Ramadan, a night known as Laylat al-Qadr. And this is described as that profound moment the first verses bridge the heavens and the earth. From there, we see significant milestones, like the 19th year of prophethood, when Surah al-Jinn was revealed, right in the middle of some intense pressure in Mecca. So in total, this compilation period spanned 23 years, gradually building this comprehensive framework for both spiritual and worldly life. Now, what's really interesting here is how these abstract historical concepts are anchored into reality. You're seeing color-coded tajweed, which are essentially the exact rules for proper pronunciation, right alongside the transliteration and the English translation. And by laying it out exactly like this, you can see just how meticulously the recitation is preserved. Literally every single syllable, every elongation is mapped out, which totally explains how millions of people across totally different centuries and geographies can memorize and recite the exact same 23-year compilation identically today. Moving right along to layer number 2, science and future technologies within the physical universe. A huge theme in our sources is the assertion that this historical text contains some really profound claims about observable science. The sources argue that it points to scientific truths centuries before modern discovery caught up. For instance, commentators highlight verses that describe the expansion of the universe and even the exact biological stages of human embryology. Astrophysics is also brought into the fold. The text is said to contain precise knowledge about the dual nature and the orbit of the star Sirius, which is something astronomers only mapped in the 19th century. Some sources even draw these wild parallels between the concept of divine predestination in Surah Taha and quantum theory's spooky action at a distance. And scholars suggest that future technologies, things like video calls or airplanes, are actually hinted at through subtle signs and principles. The argument goes that if these technologies were mentioned explicitly by name, it would have completely alienated people living 1400 years ago, violating the text's claim to be universal across all eras. And this creates a really fascinating duality. On one side, we have the physical universe, observable science, biology, and astrophysics. But on the exact opposite side, the text demands absolute belief in the unseen realm, entities like jinns, the Dajjal, and the overarching concept of divine permission. So how do we reconcile this? If the sources argue that the text accurately describes the hard physics of the observable universe, how does it navigate the completely supernatural mechanics of the unseen? Which brings us to layer 3, the world of the unseen, navigating the supernatural. In the sources provided, believing in the unseen isn't just some fringe idea. It's actually presented as the very first and most fundamental characteristic of a successful believer. So let's break down what actually inhabits this unseen world. First up, we have jinns, unseen sentient entities with free will. And there are some pretty fascinating theories in our sources suggesting they might have even aided in building ancient monuments, like the pyramids. Next is the profound concept of divine permission. This is basically the core mechanism of the unseen world, the idea that physical laws, whether it's a burning fire, the cut of a knife, or even dark magic, only operate with Allah's explicit consent. We also see this unseen world explored in esoteric texts like the Shams al-Ma'arif, which links Quranic letters to angelic concepts and planetary spheres. And finally, the unseen completely encompasses the end times, specifically the arrival of the Dajjal, who is described as the ultimate trial of human history. So naturally, the question is, how do you survive that ultimate trial? Well, the sources highlight specific protections. As this powerful hadith states, memorizing the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf acts as a literal spiritual shield against the Dajjal. The sources really emphasize here that people won't fail this trial because the Dajjal's tricks are just too clever. They're going to fail because their tawhid, their belief in the absolute oneness and ultimate power of God, is too weak. It's considered the supreme test of faith. Let's move to and see how this builds into layer 4, the heart and the opening, the spiritual core. We've just looked at the vast unseen realm, right? But looking inward to the deeply personal and spiritual core of the human heart, the entire Quran begins with Al-Fatiha, the opening, and the scholar Ibn Arabi highlights just how highly this is regarded. But why is it so powerful? Well, the sources explain that the opening word, Bismillah, in the name of God, is quite literally designed to kill human fear. Because fear is born from the question, what am I going to do all alone? Bismillah answers that question right out of the gate by declaring you are no longer alone. It's described not just as a supplication, but as the actual constitution of the universe, setting the tone for every single thing that follows. This brilliantly illustrates how the text applies directly to us as individuals, providing very specific rules and guidance. The sources highlight Surah Yasin, universally known as the heart of the Quran. It was sent to soften hardened hearts back in Mecca, reminding humanity of the specific tools we were given for our earthly test: sight, hearing, mind, understanding, and crucially, free will. The text argues it isn't just poetry based on someone's imagination, but a living criterion meant to awaken the conscience of those whose hearts are truly alive. And finally, layer 5, the pillars of faith, breaking down belief. So the crucial point is how we categorize this massive belief system after exploring history, science, the unseen, and the spiritual heart. There's a really famous hadith from Sahih Muslim where the angel Gabriel questions the prophet, and it breaks this down into 3 super clear categories. First, al-Islam, which represents physical actions, declaring faith, daily prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage. Second is al-Iman, which is internal belief, faith in God, angels, books, messengers, the afterlife, and the divine decree. And lastly, al-Ihsan, which is spiritual excellence, worshiping God as if you are directly seeing him, knowing that even if you can't see him, he absolutely sees you. It perfectly balances physical action, internal intellect, and the spiritual soul. Which leaves us right here. We've explored the historical realities, the observable physics, the hidden supernatural realms, and the really intricate workings of the human heart as presented in the Quran. And all of these layers are tied together by the concept of tawhid, a single unifying divine decree. So ask yourself, if the physical world, the unseen realms, and the human heart are all intertwined by a single divine decree, what is your place within this grand cosmic narrative? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.